Welcome to the Soul Medicine Podcast with Dr. Laura Brennis, a space where we explore healing through the body, the mind, the soul, and the spirit. Have you ever found yourself desperately wanting an answer, wanting a plan, wanting certainty before taking the next step? I know I have. We want to know how things are going to work out. We want to know if we're making the right decision. We want to know where the path is headed. But what if healing isn't about having all the answers? What if healing is learning to move forward even when you can't see the whole path? Before we go any further, I wanted to share something personal. This episode is being released on my birthday. And as I've been reflecting on the past year of my life, I can't help but think about how fitting today's topic feels. Because if you asked me a few years ago what this season of my life would look like, I never would have described this. I never would have predicted the challenges, the lessons, or the healing that came from it all. And yet, here I am. And despite the uncertainty, despite the plans that didn't unfold the way I expected, I can honestly say that I have never felt more connected to who I truly am, more aligned with my purpose, more aware of what truly matters, which is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation today. Because some of the most meaningful chapters of our lives begin when we stop trying to control every detail and learn to trust where the path is leading us. In our last episode, we talked about that uncomfortable space between who we were and who we're becoming. The place where the old version of ourselves no longer fits, but the new version hasn't fully emerged. I think one of the hardest parts of that space isn't the change itself, it's the uncertainty, not knowing what's next, not knowing how things will unfold, not knowing where the path is leading. If I'm being honest, life has never unfolded exactly the way I thought it would. There have been beautiful surprises, unexpected opportunities, and there have also been detours I would have never chosen. Seasons that stretched me, seasons that humbled me, seasons that asked me to let go of plans I was certain would come to pass, seasons of rebuilding, seasons of questioning everything. But through all those chapters, I still believed I knew where I was headed. I still believed that if I worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, and did all the right things, that I could predict the outcome. Then life invited me into a season where there was no clear roadmap, no certainty, no timeline, no guarantee of what came next. And that was incredibly uncomfortable. But it was also transformative because it forced me to stop looking so far ahead and to start trusting what was directly in front of me. It forced me to loosen my grip on how I thought things should unfold and become open to possibilities I never could have imagined for myself. And looking back now, I can see some of the greatest gifts in my life arrive through doors I never would have chosen to walk through. I think many of us believe uncertainty is the problem. We tell ourselves, once I know what's next, I'll feel better. Once I have the answer, I'll feel safe. Once I have a plan, I'll be at peace. But I've learned that certainty is often an illusion. None of us truly know what tomorrow holds. We simply become attached to the belief that we do. And when life takes away the illusion of certainty, it can feel terrifying, but it can also become an invitation to trust, an invitation to surrender, an invitation to become. Sometimes things need to fall away in our lives to make room for new things that are more aligned with who we are becoming. New opportunities, new relationships, new perspectives, new ways of living, new ways of being. And while that process can be uncomfortable, It often creates space for growth, space for possibility, space for something we couldn't yet see when we were holding so tightly to what came before. I used to think faith meant believing everything would work out exactly the way I wanted it to. Now I see it differently. Faith isn't certainty. Faith isn't knowing how the story ends. Faith is continuing to move forward even when you can't see the entire path. Faith is trusting that clarity often comes later. Faith is saying, I don't exactly know where this is leading, but I'm willing to keep walking. One of the greatest gifts I've received during this journey is realizing that I don't need all the answers before moving forward. I don't need to know how everything will work out. I don't need to see 5 years into the future. I don't need to have every detail figured out because when we're overwhelmed by uncertainty, we're often trying to solve problems that don't yet exist. We're trying to control outcomes before they happen. We're trying to predict a future we cannot see. But healing happens here, in this moment, in today's assignment, in what's directly in front of us. So if you're navigating uncertainty right now, take a deep breath. Place a hand over your heart and ask yourself, what's the next step? Not how will everything work out? Not what should I do with the rest of my life? Not what if I make the wrong decision? Simply, what's the next step? Then listen. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's resting. Maybe it's setting a boundary. Maybe it's asking for help. Maybe it's doing nothing at all today. Trust whatever comes. One of the things I've learned over the years is that clarity rarely arrives all at once. Life tends to unfold in pieces. One conversation, one opportunity, one insight, one decision, one step at a time. I often think of them as spiritual breadcrumbs, little nudges, little invitations, small moments that catch our attention. A book that seems to appear at exactly the right time, a conversation you weren't expecting to have, an idea that just won't leave you alone, a deep feeling inside that says, pay attention to this. The problem is, these breadcrumbs rarely come with guarantees. They don't tell us where the path ends. They simply invite us to move forward and then to trust what comes next. Not with certainty, not with perfection, just trust. The willingness to follow what feels aligned. The willingness to follow what resonates. The willingness to take action before knowing exactly where it will lead. I've learned to trust those moments, not because I always know where they're headed, but because looking back, they've often been the very things guiding me towards the next chapter. I think many people are waiting for intuition to arrive like a lightning bolt, something dramatic, undeniable. But in my experience, intuition is usually much quieter than that. It often feels like a gentle knowing, a sense of peace, a feeling that says, this feels aligned, or this feels like it's for me. The more I've learned to regulate my nervous system, the easier it's become to recognize those moments. Because fear is loud, survival mode is loud. The nervous system is constantly scanning, anticipating, and reacting. But intuition tends to be calm. It doesn't force, it doesn't pressure, it invites. And once we receive that intuitive nudge, we have to make a choice. We can ignore it or we can take aligned action. The small steps that honor what we know to be true. The small steps that move us towards what feels aligned with our values, our purpose, and who we are becoming. If you're standing in the sacred in between right now, if you're living without a map, if you're waiting for certainty before moving forward, I want you to know that you're not alone. Some of the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin in uncertainty. Some of the greatest transformations happen when we stop demanding answers and start trusting the process. You don't need the entire map. You don't need every answer. You simply need the courage to take the next step and the willingness to trust the breadcrumbs that appear along the way. And as I celebrate another trip around the sun, I find myself grateful, not because everything went according to my plan, but because it didn't. Because the things I thought would break me taught me about who I truly am. Because the unexpected detours revealed gifts I never would have discovered otherwise. Because every step of the journey brought me home to myself. If these conversations about nervous system healing, self trust, intuition, and creating safety within yourself resonate with you, I'm currently creating a deeper healing experience called the Soul Medicine Method. It's designed to help you move from survival mode into safety, self trust, and alignment through nervous system regulation, mindset work, and practical healing tools. If you'd like to be one of the first to know when enrollment opens, I'd invite you to join the waitlist through the link in the show notes. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And remember, be gentle with yourself. You are already whole. You are already worthy. You are so deeply loved. It is safe now to return home to yourself. I'll meet you there. I'm Dr. Laura Brennis, and this is Soul Medicine. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please continue to work with your own medical professionals for individualized care.